Follow after Matt. Can you hear me all? Good morning. It's a tough act to follow, especially with Matt going over time. But the show must go on, and we're excited to have you here. So imagine driving a car where you have two pedals, one for speed and one for reliability, right? So now you must balance both at the same time to get to your final destination efficiently and securely. In cloud computing, compliance and cost optimization are like those two paddles. If you push one too hard, you might compromise the other. So just like driving, we want to make sure that we have the right balance, and it's difficult sometimes to find that. So I'm very happy to be joined by Helvetia Insurance. I am Frank Noel, Solution Architect Manager. I'm joined by Patrick Mevel, he's our expert on compliance. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the balance between those two. So without any further ado, Patrick?
Thank you, Frank. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session where I'm going to present what Helvetia Insurance is doing to manage cloud compliance and cost optimization. So what is Helvetia? It's a Swiss insurance group, so headquartered in Switzerland with international presence. As you can see on the right side of this slide, we are quite a big insurance. And the method I'm going to present today actually can be used by a company, by an organization of any size. So even SMBs can profit from this. Helvetia started its cloud migration a few years ago. What we've done is a lift and shift migration strategy. We have migrated about more than 200 applications over 5 or 6 years. As you can see here, in 2018, 83% of our IT infrastructure was on-prem in our own data center. And we've been able to shut down our data center early this year. Just like any company that goes through a lift and shift migration, after it, not everything is optimal. We need to do a lot of optimization. Optimization can happen on different levels. Today, I'm going to talk about compliance and FinOps. So what we did, and what I would encourage you to do if you have not done so yet, is to create two roles in your organization. One FinOps role, who's all about getting the most value out of the cloud, and one cloud compliance role, which is about complying with regulatory standards. If you don't make these two roles work together, they might end up with decisions that could be contradictory. So the FinOps person could take some cost-cutting measures that are going to impact compliance negatively, and vice versa. So maybe in a smaller company, maybe in an SMB, those two roles might be in different teams, different departments within the organization. Maybe the two roles don't even exist, or it could be the same person actually doing the two roles. So for this need to align, let's see if we can find some tool, some method that is going to help this. So it's a very simple quadrant. It's a model we are using. On the vertical axis, we have the cost optimization, the FinOps part. So any initiative, any idea that we are thinking about implementing, if it is going to reduce costs, that means it's going to have a positive impact on cost optimization, it would be on top. Any initiative that could actually increase costs, so a bad impact, a negative impact on cost optimization is at the bottom. On the horizontal axis, it is the impact of the introduction of a new initiative on compliance. If it's going to improve it on the right, if it's going to reduce it on the left. So anything that is in the top right corner is a must-do initiative for us. And right now I'm showing the model, but I will also show you a list of real-life ideas and initiatives and how we position them on this quadrant. Similarly, anything that is in the bottom left corner is a do not do initiative. Anything that's going to reduce compliance and that's going to cost more money, and we should definitely not do it. Now there are two squares missing. Those two need to be counterbalanced very carefully. So you could decide to do an initiative from the top left corner. If it's going to reduce cost, but it might impact slightly compliance in a negative way, you might still do it. If you balance it, if you counterbalance it with another initiative from the bottom right corner, so one that will increase compliance and raise cost. So I need to make it a bit more real. It is theory so far. So let's look at some real-life optimization ideas. Let's first start with the top right corner. So initiatives that we assume, we think we must do. Let's look at A here. So the SSM agent, the agent for the Amazon Simple Server Management Service. Since we did a lift and shift migration, it has not been installed on every instance within the organization. So we need to improve that. Why? It's going to help to make operations more effective, more cost effective. It's also going to bring automation, which as an end result will help us improve compliance. Something similar for B, the CloudWatch agent. We need more data, more metrics in order to right-size an instance, for instance. These additional logs will also help us with compliance. So that's also a must-do initiative. For our database servers, C here. Since it was a lift and shift migration, so on-prem, we had database servers, so with a database installed on a virtual machine. It remained like that. We don't want to stay with this for too long. We want to make use of managed services like RDS, where we are going to save some money because some of the operational tasks are going to be managed automatically by AWS. And also for compliance, there is a less risk of a human mistake. So that's also good. That's why you would find it in this green top right corner. Auto-scaling groups have not really been used on-prem. That's something that we are putting in place now. Why? Easy, you might know, this will enable us to do some horizontal scaling, so to have smaller instances, and we can add automatically more instances depending on the traffic. So very good for cost optimization. And for compliance, if one instance fails, if there is an issue, it will be automatically replaced by the auto-scaling group. Serverless, E, is always an interesting one. There is a potential to save some money for some applications, not for all of them. For instance, if you have an application that runs 24/7 with a high demand, a high traffic, it's probably not a good candidate for serverless because you might end up spending more money. But for many other applications, serverless can be very effective, can reduce the cost. So we've put it in the middle. We think it's going to have a positive impact on cost, but depending on the choices we are going to make, it could be higher or lower. And for compliance, again, the elimination of human mistakes, the possibility of human mistakes, make it more compliant. EBS snapshots, we currently do have, so we are keeping snapshots for too long, and we have too many of them. We are aware of it, so we need to improve the life cycle. You can see that from a compliance perspective, it's in the middle, because we don't think it's going to change much if we reduce the retention time, but we still keep the snapshots long enough. For compliance, it will be fine. And for cost optimization, there is a real potential. Finally, for this category, G, EC2 scheduling. So not all EC2 instances are needed 24/7. There are some of them that can be shut down, so stopped in the evening or during weekends. So, of course, not all of them, but if we identify those that can be stopped, there is a lot of money to be saved as well. Now, let's move to the bottom left corner. So those initiatives that we think we shouldn't do. When you reserve instances, you can choose what kind of reserved instances you want. You can decide to reserve instances in one specific availability zone. That's not something we like to do, because we consider, from a resiliency and compliance perspective, that putting data into only one AZ is risky. Although AWS is the most stable cloud provider, availability zones can fail. So if we are going to reserve instances, let's reserve them in one region, not in one single zone, because we don't want to be stuck with that AZ. Actually, we don't so much like reserved instances either, because it is the old way of thinking, the data center mindset, and it would prevent us from benefiting from all the value of the cloud, of the elasticity, the flexibility. Same for dedicated host. Again, old way of thinking, data center. So that's to be avoided. It's more cost. It doesn't really make a difference for compliance, so we put it down there. We are going to look at the two other squares now. So those initiatives that we might do if we counterbalance with another one. Spot instances. So you probably know that there is a major discount that you can get from those. It is about unused capacity from AWS. If your application can be stopped, it is fantastic. But not all applications can be stopped and restarted later. So for anything like batch processing, just to give an example, it is great. So we are going to look into it very carefully and select the proper applications that could benefit from spot instances. From a compliance point of view, we have put it slightly in the negative zone. Why? Not because of spot instances, but because of us. We need to learn how to benefit from spot instances. We need to select the right applications. We need to make sure to test that when an application stops, that it can restart safely, that no data is lost, for instance. So I would say that for the time being, we put it slightly on the left, but this one has really the potential to go to the top right corner. S3 cross-region replication. Since I'm in charge of cloud compliance, I would say this one is fantastic for compliance. So it means that every time you put an object, a document, a file, into one S3 bucket, into region A, it's going to be automatically replicated to region B. Fantastic for compliance. It means that if there is a major disaster at the regional level, that we still have our data in another region. But my FinOps colleague doesn't think the same, so because it's additional costs. So this is where it ends up in this area, where we might do it for some critical applications, but again, very carefully. We have a third-party backup tool currently, and we are going to add AWS backup to it to complement it. In the beginning, it's going to create additional costs. Over time, as we are leveraging more AWS backup, there is a potential in the future that it moves to the top right corner as well. But for now, we put it in this area. And the last one is something you shouldn't do. I wanted to end this slide with an example of something you really shouldn't do. So if you have a FinOps person who proposes to use single AZ on production databases, well, you need to explain how it works. You need to explain what I said before, that from a compliance perspective, do not rely on one single AZ. It's just too risky. So try to use always multi-AZ on production databases. You don't need it necessarily for development databases or staging databases, it's fine. But on production, I can think of very limited cases where it would make sense to have a single AZ. Like if you had a productive application where you know that if you lose the data, you can recreate it. Potentially, you could think about it. But it's very, very unlikely.
Hey, Patrick.
So this is where we are. Yes, Frank?
So this is a very compelling framework that you built here. Can you talk about how different it may be for some of the members of the audience?
Yeah, I was going to that. That's absolutely important for you. I see that some of you are taking pictures. This is the situation for Helvetia insurance today. If you do a similar exercise in your organization, it should be different. First of all, you're probably going to have a different list of IDs. And then even the same IDs, you would position them, you would locate them in a different area because it depends on your priorities and on your current situation. So think about it. It is a tool that is important, not necessarily where the spots are. Now, how can you make use of this in your organization? First of all, well, create those FinOps and cloud compliance roles if you don't have them yet. I can say that we decided to put them in the same team so that they have to work together, which is really what we are trying to achieve. Actually, this team is similar to a CCOE, a Cloud Center of Excellence, and this is where the two roles are located. How do you select the right persons, the right profiles for that? I would recommend to find some people who have an architecture background. Do not take, for instance, just an accountant for cost optimization. You need someone who understands the technologies, the architecture, and the impacts. If you have an accountant, make sure that this person is working with an architect on FinOps. Same for compliance. 2, make sure they are working hand in hand. Again, putting them in the same team is great. If you can't, at least organize that they are working together. And 3, align initiatives. So in this session, we saw a very simple method. You can make use of the same one, or you can come up with your own, and give it a try. Again, the goal is to make sure they are working together.
Great. Well, thank you, Patrick. We're going to be outside if you have any questions. So we're going to stick around for the next 10 to 20 minutes, but we want to make sure we make space for the next speaker. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.